$80,000 vanished from our joint account, and my ex swore under oath it never existed. Then his public Strava map started drawing the same orange line to a storage facility. That line led me to everything. The strangest proof in my divorce was not a bank statement or a secret email. It was a little orange cycling route, looping back to the storage facility like a trail he had posted himself. While he told the court his business had no cash reserves, his workout app kept disagreeing. Before the lawyers took over my kitchen table, our life looked boring in the way marriages can look safe. We had shared bills, shared passwords, and a business that always sounded busy enough to explain late nights. He loved tools, trucks, routes, and numbers. I handled the household payments and believed marriage meant we were building the same future. My ex had a talent for making confidence sound like evidence. When he said business was slow, he gave me that heavy sigh, the one that made him look like the only adult in the room. When a payment had to wait, he acted like the person asking was unreasonable for wanting an answer. He knew invoices, he knew equipment, he knew cash flow, and he knew just enough legal language to make me feel small when the marriage started coming apart. What made it harder to argue with was the performance. Online, he was not a struggling owner scraping by. He was the man posting rides, mileage, new gear, and the truck he treated like a trophy. There was always that scratched black smartwatch on his wrist, always another route, another number, another little badge of discipline. He wanted people to see motion and hustle. He wanted admiration without questions. I did not understand his blind spot yet. He could hide documents from me, dodge plain answers, and make a courtroom sentence sound harmless. But he could not resist leaving proof of the life he wanted everyone to envy. Every post polished the mask. The first time I felt the floor tilt, nothing dramatic happened. I was at the kitchen table with a highlighter in my hand, going line by line through statements that should have made sense and did not. $80,000 had moved out of our joint account. The explanation kept changing. One day, he blamed vendor pressure. Another day, he said payroll had swallowed it. Then he told me it was something I did not need to worry my pretty little head about, which told me exactly how much respect he had left for me. By the time the divorce was underway, worry had turned into evidence, and evidence had turned into a fight. Under oath, he swore his business had no cash reserves. He said there was nothing set aside, nothing hidden, and nothing available. I remember hearing him say it and feeling heat climb behind my eyes because I was not inventing the missing money. I had watched it leave. But divorce does not care what you know in your bones. It cares what you can prove. At that point, I had a number, a statement, and a man who could sound certain while lying. That certainty became a weapon, and for a while it worked. After that hearing, I understood why divorce can make you feel invisible. I was paying for legal emails in 6-minute increments, reading paperwork after work until the words blurred, and still being told, gently but firmly, that suspicion was not proof. My attorney needed documents. The accountant needed source records. The court needed something sturdier than my memory of a balance before it disappeared. Meanwhile, ordinary life kept tugging at my sleeve. Bills arrived. The dishwasher clicked in the quiet kitchen. I would wake at 3 a.m. and stare at the ceiling, asking the same question over and over. Where does $80,000 go when someone wants it to vanish? Then a small detail started bothering me. His trips had a rhythm. There were toll receipts that did not match the errands he claimed to be running, and they bunched up around the days he called business cleanup. Alone, they looked like boring little slips of paper, the kind anyone would toss into a glove box and forget. Together, they felt like footprints. I did not know where those footprints led yet, but they proved something important to me. The money had not simply evaporated. There was movement, and movement could be mapped. That thought did not fix my case. It did something better. It kept me from surrendering to his version of events, and it made me stop looking only at bank records. The breaking point came on a night when I should have been asleep. The house was quiet. The dishwasher had clicked off, and I was still at the table with my glasses sliding down my nose while the numbers blurred into gray lines. For weeks, I had been trying to make the truth sound reasonable to people who had no reason to trust my anger. Then something in me went cold. I realized I was fighting the wrong battle. I did not need to prove he was the kind of man who would hide money. I needed to prove that the money, the equipment, and the movement all belonged in the same story. So I stopped reacting to him. I stopped sending long messages he could twist into proof that I was unstable. I stopped asking questions he could duck with a sigh. I made one folder, then another, then a timeline. Bank withdrawals went in one column. Toll receipts went in another. Court statements sat beside them. His public posts went into their own file, because if he wanted an audience, I was going to let that audience help document him. It felt strange to become this organized about my own heartbreak. It felt almost cruel that every saved receipt gave me air. Every match date gave me a little piece of myself back. And here is the part nobody tells you. Documentation can feel like revenge before anyone else realizes the fight has changed. The plan did not begin with a confrontation. It began with a rule I made for myself. One source, one date, one entry, and then I had to walk away before the whole day disappeared into him again. The toll receipts gave me a corridor of travel, but not a destination. The bank's statements showed the missing money, but not where it had gone. Then I saw the third trail, and it was so ordinary I almost skipped past it. His Strava rides kept ending near the same storage facility. It was not one random workout, and it was not a route that happened to loop back there by accident. Again and again, that bright little line on the map drifted toward the same place. I sat with my hand over my mouth and went back through the dates. I compared the tolls, the withdrawals, the rides, and the court statement where he swore there was nothing left. The pattern was not proof by itself, and I knew that. But it was direction. I wrote down the facility name. I saved the visible route data. I added the locker number I had been able to identify. Then I stopped myself. I was not going to march into a storage office and become the angry ex-wife he wanted the court to see. If this was going to work, it had to move through the accountant, the attorney, and the judge. I was done begging to be believed. I was going to make belief unnecessary. When I finally handed the packet to my forensic accountant, I had braced for caution. I expected her to fold her hands and tell me to slow down, because professionals have a way of making panic sound expensive. Instead, she went very still. She lined up the withdrawals, the toll receipts, the Strava routes, and the storage information, and the shape of it became harder to dismiss. This was no longer only my word against his. It looked like a business owner moving money and tools. Outside the picture he had sworn was empty. The twist was how much came from his own need to perform. He had hidden behind formal statements, but his public habits kept pointing to the one place those statements did not want anyone to examine. That almost made me laugh, though there was nothing funny about it. He had treated my questions like noise, yet his own bragging had given me a map. If you have ever been told you are overreacting while the evidence is sitting right in front of you, stay with me and subscribe, because this is where the paperwork starts pushing back. My accountant did not make wild accusations. She built a clean, careful summary that a court could actually use. She matched dates to routes. She tied receipts to travel. She noted the locker information and the missing funds without turning it into drama. The goal was not revenge the way I felt it at 2 in the morning. The goal was leverage, the legal kind, the kind that can open a locked door without breaking it. The first small victory was quiet. My attorney read the accountant's summary while I sat across from her with my folder pressed against my ribs, the silver binder clip biting into my thumb. I was ready for the sigh. I was ready for another careful explanation of why suspicion was not enough. Instead, she asked precise questions. Could we authenticate the route data? Could the toll dates be tied cleanly to the timeline? Could we explain why that locker mattered without sounding like we were filling in blanks? For once, nobody was trying to calm me down. They were trying to strengthen the record. That changed the way my body carried the fear. I started sleeping in longer stretches. I still woke up anxious, but now there was a task list waiting instead of a spiral. He, meanwhile, seemed completely unaware that the ground had shifted. He kept presenting himself as the exhausted business owner with nothing left to give. He acted as if a sworn denial was a wall nobody could touch. And online, the performance kept going. The truck appeared again, polished and posed like proof of success, while the legal version of him claimed there was nothing available. I stopped letting those posts burn through me. I treated them like exhibits waiting for a number. Every boast had a date. Every date had a place. Every place either matched his story or weakened it. The victory was not that I had caught him yet. The victory was that his version of reality was no longer the only one in the room. For the first time, mine had a chair at the table. Recommitment sounds brave when you describe it later. In the middle of it, it felt like choosing the harder road every morning before the coffee had even cooled. There was a real risk in pushing. If the judge thought the storage theory was thin, I could look vindictive. If the accountant could not tie the records together, I might spend money. I did not have only to hear again that suspicion was not enough. I also had to decide how much of my private humiliations I was willing to turn into a public record. Divorce already strips your life into documents. Bank lines replace conversations. Receipts replace trust. Now I was adding maps, route data, tolls, and online posts to the pile. The worst part was that being careful made me feel colder than he ever accused me of being. But the alternative was accepting his oath as truth, while $80,000 stayed missing. So we narrowed the plan. We took the anger out of it, at least on paper. We were not asking the court to believe every bad thing I thought about him. We were asking for more discovery because the specific records pointed to a specific storage location. I still wonder, if you had only a pattern, a locker number, and missing money, would you have kept pushing, or would you have waited for something more obvious? Tell me in the comments. For me, waiting had started to feel like helping him win. When the motion went in, the whole case seemed to hold its breath. On paper, the request was simple. We were asking to reopen discovery because as new information suggested undisclosed assets might be sitting in a storage unit connected to the missing funds. In my body, it felt anything but simple. My hands shook when my attorney called, and I had to sit down at the kitchen table before I answered. By then, I had learned not to hope too loudly. She did not make me wait long. The judge agreed. Discovery would reopen, the storage facility records. The business assets and the money trail could be examined more closely. That was the moment his wall started cracking. His side did what people do when confidence stops working. They questioned relevance. They acted offended. They said the Strava rides were meaningless exercise routes and the toll receipts proved nothing. But the tone had changed. Before, he sounded dismissive. Now he sounded careful, and careful scared me more because it meant he knew the questions had teeth. The court had not declared him guilty of anything. It had done something more dangerous to him. It had allowed questions he did not control. If you are still with me, subscribe and do not miss the next part, because questions are terrifying when the answers are sitting behind a roll-up door. I remember standing at my counter after that call, not celebrating yet, just gripping the edge and realizing the next document could change everything. The confrontation did not happen the way I used to rehearse it in my head. Nobody slammed a hand on the table. Nobody called him a liar. My attorney simply laid the pages out in order, and somehow that felt more dangerous. The joint account showed $80,000 leaving. The toll receipts showed the same repeated drives on dates that did not fit his innocent explanations. Then the Strava records showed his rides ending over and over at the same storage facility. Finally, the locker number gave the court an actual door to open. Each piece by itself gave him somewhere to hide. People use toll roads. People ride bikes. People rent storage units. I could almost hear him trying to push everything back into that fog. But he had sworn under oath that there were no cash reserves, while money and business property were being kept out of sight. That was no longer a feeling in my chest. It was a question discovery could force him to answer. The twist was not that he used a storage facility. The twist was that the trail leading there had been public, repetitive, and proud. He had turned his routine into a witness. The app he used to show discipline became the record that challenged his story. When the forensic accountant explained it in that calm voice, the room changed. My folder was still pressed against me, the silver clip digging into my palm. But my suspicion had finally become a pattern with addresses, dates, and consequences. The reckoning arrived in the least dramatic language possible. It came through court orders, corrected numbers, and questions he could no longer laugh off. Discovery found what he had sworn was not there. Hidden cash and business tools kept away from the version of his finances he had presented. I wish I could tell you I felt joy first. I did not. I felt tired in a way that settled behind my eyes and made my hands go cold. My body had been braced for so long that even proof felt heavy. Then the meaning caught up with me. He had made me pay, emotionally and financially. For refusing to pretend $80,000 had vanished into thin air. My attorney and the forensic accountant had to spend billable hours proving reality because his oath had been treated like a wall. The judge saw that. The court corrected the asset picture, but it also made him cover my legal fees. And the source of that payment was the part I still almost laugh about. It was the truck. It was the same truck he posed online, washed and polished, as if it proved he was winning. It was the truck that let him play successful, generous, and untouchable. That truck became the way my fees got paid. It was not revenge the way movies sell it, with shouting and one perfect speech. It was quieter and colder than that. The image he protected helped fund the truth he tried to bury. For the first time in months, I could breathe without feeling like I was waiting for the next lie. The fallout was quieter than people expect, and maybe that made it harder to explain. There was no single moment where he was dragged out of the room, and everyone gasped. His strongest weapon had always been certainty. He could look straight at someone and make doubt feel rude. He could make me sound emotional for noticing what did not add up. After discovery reopened and the hidden assets came out, that certainty lost its shine. Every statement he made had a shadow attached to it. Every claim about having no reserves had to sit beside the cash, the tools, the storage records, and the route pattern he had left behind. He was not destroyed by one dramatic speech. He was undone by consistency. That was the part I kept returning to. The same habits that made him feel untouchable were the habits that made him traceable. Financially, he had to face the corrected asset picture. Legally, he had to deal with my fees. Personally, he had to live with the truck becoming part of his loss instead of his status. I did not need to humiliate him. The record did that all by itself, and there is a strange peace in watching a performance collapse without having to raise your voice over it. Reclaiming my life did not arrive with a dramatic reset. It came back in small, almost boring pieces, which is how I knew it was real. I cleared the stacks of bank records and printouts from the kitchen table. I put my folder in a drawer instead of keeping it beside my plate. I stopped checking his posts like they were weather reports for my safety. Being believed by a court did not heal me, but it gave me ground solid enough to stand on. The money mattered. The legal fees mattered. The corrected record mattered. What I remember most, though, is one quiet morning when the coffee smelled like coffee again. Not another calculation of what his lie had cost me. I had spent so long chasing proof that peace felt suspicious. Slowly, I let it feel familiar. I was no longer the woman begging him to admit what he had done. I was the woman who followed the trail and survived it. The lesson I carry from all of this is simple. People who depend on your silence usually underestimate your patience. He thought the oath was the ending. He thought missing money could stay blurred inside complicated business explanations if he sounded confident enough. But karma did not arrive as lightning. It arrived as toll receipts, route data, a locker number, and a forensic accountant willing to connect what he had left behind. If this story made you trust that small detail you cannot stop thinking about, subscribe and stay with me for more stories where patience changes the outcome. And remember, the truth does not always kick down the door. Sometimes it rolls up quietly, wearing the same map someone posted for applause.